Hey guys, it's Marina with Art Worthy Life, where I teach Christ-centered art journaling that gets you into God's Word every day. Happy Friday, everybody! And we're going to do another art journal page from start to finish under the whole theme of like wintry, aurora borealis, beautiful snowy scenery. We've been doing a lot of that. Our theme inside the Art Worthy Journal Club is Snow from Heaven, and it has been a really beautiful, peaceful kind of theme for the month of January, which is always a really beautiful month because we get kind of that mix of well, at least in Oregon, we get that mix of foggy weather and snowy weather. And we were just talking about that in the Art Journal DIY group. And I think someone in Minnesota said they're having like full on snow. So you guys let me know where you're watching from, what the weather is like where you're at, and we're going to go ahead and get started on this journal page. But I wanted to just real quick show you, this is the journal page I finished last week. And for those of you that joined us last week, I just wanted to give you an update. Here is the Mod Podge Dimensional Magic that we used, all dry. You see that has all dried? Do you see that shine on there? Tell me if you guys can see that on the screen, because I'm not sure if it's really that visible. But I just want to show that to you dry. And I also wanted to give you a really candid review of what I think about this, this supply so far. And if you want to see that, you can go over into the Art Journaling DIY group. And if you're not already a member of that, go ahead and join, and we'd love to have you over there. It's a free group just for fun, sharing some art journaling. And we also have a 15-minute Friday every Friday where you can ask questions and we talk about the things you guys want to know about, versus this one where I just basically do what I think is fun and talk to you guys while we're on here. So anyway, make sure you join that group. And if you want to see what I thought of this and get some good pointers on how to use this, or how not to use this, more likely is actually the way I should say that, go over to that live that I just did, and you can watch the replay and say that you've watched the replay, so I know you were over there. Hi Daniel, good morning. So we're going to go ahead and do an art journal page from start to finish, but I want to read you guys a scripture to get us started. Because we've been doing the Northern Lights, or aurora borealis, I thought it would be fun to read a Bible verse about light. So this is from John 8:12, and you guys probably know this, but I'm just going to go ahead and read it because it's one of the greatest verses about light that you could possibly read. Because we like to get started on the right foot with some scripture every day. This says, "Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." And something to think about. I always kind of think about this when God says, "I am light." We know that God is everywhere. You know, he's present in all places and all over in the world. There's nowhere that you can hide from God. But you know, what's also interesting is light is almost everywhere. So if God actually is light, maybe that's just one of the ways he presents himself. Wouldn't that be interesting? I have no idea. I don't know what those theological implications would be, but it would be really interesting to find out whether or not he actually is the essence of light also, or whether that's part of him. I don't know. Wouldn't that be interesting? Okay, so we're going to do an art journal page. Basically, this is going to be a combination of some of the things we've done prior to today's live. So some of the skills you've already learned if you've been following. If this is your first time watching, please say hello and tell me where you're watching from. And if this is not your first time watching, tell me how long you've been watching. I like to see who's on and where they're from and what we're doing. So I want to start with the sky in this painting. So I've actually sketched this out. I'm not sure if you guys can see this. I've sketched out a drawing. Am I close to the camera? Okay. I sketched out a drawing on here. There we go. Of basically a snowscape, landscape. Let me go up. Okay, so here's the little horizon line over here. These are kind of like mountains in the distance, and then there's like a river coming forward and some trees. I just wanted to show you that like ahead of time so you know what we're aiming for. But if you just want to follow along, have your watercolor materials, watercolor supplies ready, a good clean jar of water, and you want to start off with a big brush. Now, a lot of people get a little freaked out when we grab a really big brush for an art journal page, but the reason we want to use big brushes is because you can get a lot done quickly. So in this case, we're going to start by wetting the whole back of this art journal with just clean water. This is just clean water going all across the back. We've done this technique so many times. You guys probably know what it's called, but I'll tell you again, this is like wet on wet. So you start with a wet page, and the reason you do that is because if you paint directly onto a dry page with a lot of these brush strokes, if you painted straight onto a dry page, it would not flow the way you want it to. Whereas if you start with a wet page, water likes to just go in the direction it's already flowing. So that will give it more of a soft blended look, and that's what you want to go for. So the first color I'm going to grab is going to be a nice light yellow green, and that is a combination of neon yellow and neon green from this Komorebi watercolor set that I have. If you're interested in knowing what supplies I use all the time, I've posted about it a couple of times, but you can also send me a message and I can let you know. And I'm just going to drop some of this green onto the page in kind of an up and down pattern with my brush strokes. So I'm going to paint these northern lights, but I'm not going to be too critical of them being exactly the right shape or something. I mostly am worried about the color. Once the color is down on the page, the water will do the work of blending, and I won't have to do a whole lot. But look at this crazy neon color. If you look at pictures of the northern lights, they are like really, really bright. I was so surprised when I started looking at pictures for reference, and I thought, do I really want to do, because I'm not big on neons, you guys know. I'm not super big on bright colors. I like softer pastels and things like that. But if you don't use those bright colors, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like the northern lights. So now what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of blue, and I'm going to try to keep you guys updated on what I'm doing, but I have to move a little quickly because the page is drying. So you want to just keep moving. I'm going to wet this down again just to keep that page wet. Just going to add some more water to there. What was I saying? Something about the northern lights. I don't know. Anyway, oh, you want to keep your paint flowing. And if you don't, it'll just kind of like stop at the edge and it won't flow as naturally. So the next color I want to use is a purple, and this is going to be a combination of 34 violet and some neon pink. I made this combination the other day, and I just want to add a little bit of that into this painting to show some of the purple in the northern lights. And you can see I'm kind of going up and down. Now I'm taking a clean brush and kind of blending that in like that. And I'm doing this almost like a heartbeat. You know, the, what's that? I lost the word. The chart that charts your heartbeat. You can kind of do it in that motion and it'll have that sporadic up and down pattern. And as my ladies were trying this the other day, they were totally freaking out because it was, well, they weren't totally freaking out. That's an overstatement. But they were quite concerned because it looks wonky. It just looks weird to have really bright colors next to each other and then also just kind of throwing color on the page in random areas, seemingly random areas. But when you start to frame it in with all of the scenery that we're going to add, it's going to look a lot better. So just trust the process and don't worry about it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in some blue. This is azurite blue with some black mixed in. I'm going to drop it into the corners. Now this water, this page is already wet, so the water that's on the page is going to help the paint get to the rest of the page. So you don't have to actually help it that much. I'm just going to get it across the top here and the bottom. And I want to also do this bottom area here along the mountain ridge so that it looks like these northern lights are floating above that. So you see how that water's starting to come down? I can help it a little bit by doing some brush strokes that way. But really, if your page is still wet, it will just flow and you won't have to help it a ton. You see how that's starting to kind of stretch into the lights? I don't really worry about the edge being a perfect border. I like for it to be a little less exact. But I do want this little kind of flowy line to be filled in. So see that? If you just kind of like let it flow with the water, it will go ahead. Let me see if I'm missing any comments. Do I see anybody? Okay. Say hi if you're watching so I know you're there. And we're just going to let this section dry. I think I've got some, I don't know, Mod Podge or something over there that's creating a little white spot, which is fine. We can work with that later. So while this blue is wet, we want to add some darker blue. So I'm going to take black and that same blue and just make a darker blue and drop it in the furthest corners of this painting so that the black starts to frame in the scene. It will darken the sky some so that the sky looks more nighttime like. If it's too light, it won't have the right effect. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to put a little bit of that along this ridge as well. That darkest black. And you see I'm still using the same brush because mostly we're just dropping color in. We're not really doing detail right now. So you can do that with your brush. And I can actually add some of this darker color right up under the lights. I find that if you add a dark color next to a light color, it makes the lighter color pop a little bit more. So you can try that if you want to. Looks a little strange until it starts to dry, but just trust that it's going to all even out and look okay. It's always a little bit weird when you're starting with that. So what we're going to do now is this. There's a little river here that I've painted coming out from the mountains. Excuse me. So we're going to try to make this top area match this little river right here. And it doesn't have to be exact, but you just want to take some of those colors and carry them down in a mirror image. So in other words, if right here goes from blue to yellow to purple back to blue, we want to start from here down, going blue to yellow to purple and back to blue. You guys follow that? So we're going to start with the same light color that we had. I like to go light to dark when I'm doing watercolors. That usually works the best, although there's some cases where you don't do that. But in general, with watercolors, you work light to dark. And this little yellow line, I'm just going to do a quick yellow green, I should say. It's very green stripe right there to match what's happening in the sky. And I'm going to let that start to, oh, I didn't wet this whole thing down. I need to wet this area down. So I'm going to wet the whole river down with my paintbrush. Now the river looks green, but that's okay. I'm just going to clean up some of that pigment and leave that wet, and then we'll paint in on that. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit because I'm noticing the blue is running a little too much into the yellow, more than I want it to. So I'm taking a clean brush and just softening the edge of that so that as it dries, it will not be so harsh right there. Hopefully that's the goal at least. And I can do that by using a real dry brush, and I keep drying my brush off every time I pick up a little bit of color. I dry it off on my cloth. You can just kind of like let it dry off a little bit on my cloth. Now I'm going to drop in a little bit more of that green so that the green is the color that's taking precedence rather than the blue, because that's not what we're going for. Okay. So it's a little bit muddy there, but it'll look better once we get the rest of the colors in. So this is still wet down here. I want this to stay really wet so that I can add blue and pink and purple into that area. So I've already got my green. I'm going to add some purple above it because we want this to mirror the image. So I'm going to add some purple here. And like I said, it looks a little strange when you're adding this to a yellow, because this yellow, green, and purple, in general, you wouldn't want to put those two colors together because they make mud. They're two secondary colors at their base form, green and purple. And so when you mix secondary colors, you get mud usually. So that's actually like counterintuitive to do that. But if you can get them to not flow too much together, you can get that effect of the northern lights flowing through the sky. So here I'm adding blue in to mirror the top image. And then I'm also going to add blue way back here where this river is flowing. And just let that kind of flow into the green that I have there. I want this to go out and around a little bit more. So you really want the colors, anything that's in the sky, to reflect off of that river really well so that it looks like a reflection. If it doesn't reflect, then it won't have that look of water. So you really want it to reflect. Now I'm adding a little bit of really dark blue, which is blue mixed with black to make it nice and deep. And I'm just using that to match what's in the sky right there. Like that. So what we can do now, let's see if I missed anybody's comment. Okay. I want to see, because sometimes they don't. Oh, there we go. There we go. Hi, Jackie. Oh, Jackie, she says the video is starting and stopping. Hi, Terry. Good morning. Hi, Aunt Emmy. Is the video stopping and starting for anybody else? Just so I know, because I know I have a pretty decent internet connection right now. Pretty good, pretty strong internet connection, actually. And I want to know if it's Jackie's internet or mine. So can you guys let me know if it's having the same problem on your end as well? And that way I can try to fix that. Okay, so once this starts to dry, we'll be able to come in and do a little bit more, but we're going to focus on this top area while this is drying. Terry says it's good there. Yay! Okay, good for Terry. Jackie, it might be your internet. Uh-oh. All right, so we want to make the white areas look more like snow. So snow is white, but it reflects some of the color. Some of the color in the sky. So to create those shadows, we want to use the same colors we used in the sky to make the snow look like it's got some dimension. So there's a couple of hills happening back here, but I'm just going to kind of come along the edge of this one here that's kind of flowing down and then coming up and over. So I'm just going to take that a light blue, which is just a watered down version of the blues that I used on the sky and the water. And I'm just using a watered down blue. I should be using a smaller brush, but you guys know how I have a hard time switching brushes. So here is that little ridge, and I'm going to darken the little valley just a little bit more. So just do some dark blue along there so you can really see where that hill is with the snow. This one comes across a little bit here, so I'm going to just kind of emphasize that a little bit. And you can use a clean brush to kind of blend the colors out. And there's going to be some stuff in the foreground as well, so we won't have to make that absolutely perfect. Then I'm just going to do some little white, I'm sorry, not white. I'm going to do some little hills and bumps across the front of the white to give the hill some little scoops in the snow and little bumps like that. So you can be a little bit random with this, but just think about where there might be little hills or dips in the snow, or even just shrubs that have gotten covered up with snow or something like that. So along the edge of the water, we can do a little bit of darker blue, just kind of along like that. We can do some down here as well. Mainly just want a few areas with some color. And then I also think it's okay to drop in a little bit of the bright color from the sky, because the snow could even be reflecting some of that green. So I'm just going to put some touches of green in the snow as well, just to show that that color is still being picked up by the light. You can blend it out with a brush like that. And just kind of sporadically put it here and there. I'm going to do a few darker shadows just to show a little bit more happening, especially back here near the hill that we just created. But it can be a little bit random. We're also going to add some trees and things, so this part isn't super critical. Okay, and then out here in the foreground, I'm just going to do a little bit more blue, just across the snow so that the snow just kind of fades off into the foreground closer to the front. Do that over here as well and let it fade into the snow like that. Like that. So you can see that gives it more, there's more happening. You can actually tell it's snow now instead of just a white spot. All right, so now what we want to do is add some trees and little shrubs and things. So I'm going to use a smaller brush, this little Master's Touch liner brush that I got from Hobby Lobby. And it's from their Fine Art Studio, which is just basically like a budget-friendly, higher quality brush that they have, a line of brushes they have. And they were really cute because they're short, so they don't have the really super long handles, which makes them great for portable painting and also for watercolors. So I'm mixing black with azurite blue. I think I'm just addicted to azurite blue. I don't know what my problem is. Maybe I should add some green. Or purple. How about some purple? That way it pulls in a little bit of the purple from the sky. So I'm going to grab violet and mix that in as well. You won't actually see very much of that color, but I like for my black to not be true black. And now I'm just going to, I have a couple of trees drawn in here. I'm going to start with the smaller one. And I'm real careful to just try to make the top nice and pointy. And then I'm just going to bring the branches down. And you can look at some reference photos of trees. That really helps. One thing when I'm doing any kind of silhouette trees like this is I really, really want my black to be dark and pigmented. In other words, you don't want your paint to be watery. Because if it's watery, it shows through. The light will show through, the paper will show through. And that kind of takes away that whole silhouette look. So I'm going to kind of give this, you can see a little bit of that purple coming through now. I like it. I'm trying to add some pigment so that my, like I said, so that my color stays really saturated and doesn't show any of the paint through, or the paper through. And then as it gets toward the bottom, I can kind of round out the bottom of this tree. I'll probably put some shadows under that in a minute. So I'm going to do the other tree while I'm over here. Start with a real thin, pointy top, and then bring down that tree. And you can just kind of go back and forth with your hand, and I kind of shake my hand. Friend of mine does trees like that, and she's amazing at it. I feel like hers always look like a real tree. And the more random it is, the better. I am gonna go ahead and add a little bit of green. I'm adding brilliant green to this black. Probably on camera you guys aren't seeing much difference. It probably just looks black to you. Tell me if that just looks black to you guys. But in person, your eye can pick up some of those colors, and it will make it a little bit more interesting to look at as a painting. I'm gonna try to make this one a little bit wider. You can see those branches coming out, and I can just paint right over top of the other tree as I'm coming down to the base of this one. Sometimes I'm trying to make my tree really even, and it's actually better for the tree to be more random. So kind of resist the temptation to perfectly make your tree triangular shaped. Emily says no problem. Jack, oh, Aunt Emmy. And then Jackie says that she guesses it's on her end. Yeah, I hope that it can clear up, Jackie, so you can see. Okay, so we'll keep working on these little trees here. And these ones, as we get down to the bottom of them, I'm going to water down my paint a little bit and just let them kind of fade out into a watery base like this. Just because I think it makes the tree look less stiff at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of water that down and let the base of the tree fade into a shadow around the tree. we'll just do a real light shadow like this around these trees. And I'm going to put another tree right here, a little bit further out. Just a little teeny guy, like a baby tree. And then I'm going to let him fade out into that same little shadowy area. This tree just became a hymn in my mind, I guess. Okay, then just going to let these branches kind of fade out in the bottom here to a little shadowy area. And then I can also add some trees on this right-hand side. Same color. I'm going to let these trees be a little bit thicker probably. Just like less light is coming through them. So less spaces on the branches. And then again, I'm watering down the paint toward the bottom to create more of a shadow at the bottom of the trees. And then I can do that on this other tree as well. I'm going to add some more purple again, so there's some other color happening in the tree. Start at the top once again, right about here. And just bring that really fuzzy, jumpy tree. It's like really full and round looking. This one is a little bit rounder than the other one. I'm going to make this one wider as well. And I keep wetting my brush because I don't like when the brush is dry. You can use a dry brush technique with watercolors that kind of scratches along the page. It's really great for creating like bark texture or some things like that. But for this one, I want to keep the paint nice and wet. So I keep wetting my brush just a little bit to keep my paint nice and wet. I'm kind of going off the page over there, but that's okay. Do that. And I'm going to water down my color again as I come to the bottom of this tree. And just use a more watered down watercolor and then just sweep that along the bottom of the tree, and that'll create a little shadow for me. I can also add in a little bit of black to any of the areas that need it to look a little bit more like a shadow. Okay, so there's my trees kind of in the front. I need a little bit more shadow happening out here because the trees are so dark. I want to make sure that the shadows happening around the trees sort of match them. So I'm going to use a watered down brush and some black and just do some shadows further out. Even along these areas, just do a little bit of darker shadow. And I want to do that along the edge of the water. And then we could do just some straight lines across the landscape a little bit. Because even though there's snow, you don't realize it, but if you're looking at a scene or something, there are oftentimes really dark spots here and there on the snow, and that's what we're emphasizing. Now I'm also going to take my black and come along this river again and give it a dark edge. I want the edge of the river to really show up because otherwise the snow is just kind of like falling into the water. I really want the edge of the river to be there, like be a true edge. So I'm adding some black along that edge and then using a clean wet brush to blend it in some. That's going to help this snowy shoreline look like a shoreline. See how that looks way more crisp? And we can just pull in that dark shadow. I'm using the same color I used for the trees. And just kind of pull that off to the right. And it doesn't really take much, and you don't even really have to blend it in that much. Just as long as it has some darker shadow there. You can pull it over a little bit into the water. And look how much better that edge looks with that little tiny bit. You can add some really dark black into there. In a couple of areas. Mostly just want to get it like as if it's sitting right up underneath a ridge of snow that's hanging over across the water. Like that. We'll actually do this on both sides. I'm going to flip my book upside down because I'm right-handed, so it's easier for me to paint coming from this direction. And I'm just going to quickly go up along this edge with the same dark blue, like that. And then we can kind of take our brush and pull it toward the center. And like I said, fade that in so it doesn't just look like an outline. And this is something you can eyeball. Obviously, I'm not an expert, and I get better every day as I practice, but what really helps me is looking at a real picture. Look at a picture of snow or look at a picture of water, especially if you want to capture how the shadows fall. And that'll really help you know there should be some dark over here. There should be some light over here. Reference photos are everything. We have a wonderful God who created a beautiful world, and so we might as well take advantage of the creation that he already made and copy the creator. Just kind of try to match what he already is doing out there because it's already so pretty. All we got to do is look at it. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over and see if it needs anything. Yeah, so this is a little rougher than I would normally like it, but I'm trying to do this quickly for an art journal. This isn't like a full-on, excuse me, a full-on painting. So you can fudge it a little bit and it doesn't have to be perfect, obviously. So I'm going to add a little bit more black back there. My ladies that are in my group always have a hard time going that dark on the black, but look how dark our trees are. You got to have something to offset that. So just in a couple of areas, I like to do a real dark black, and it just looks so much nicer when you have some dark shadows contrasting with your light colors. If you don't have the dark colors, the light colors don't look nearly so light, so it's really nice to have those. I'm going to add a little bit of darker shadows across here, just in those areas that are already dark. I'm going to add a little bit darker. And then I can even go along this hill a little bit, add some little darker areas there. And I always like to come in with a clean wet brush and kind of blend it in a little bit, like that. Okay, those are looking pretty good. Lastly, I'd like to add some trees kind of in the background. So we'll do the same black we were using earlier, that black and blue mixed together. And I had a little bit of purple in that too. You can add that too if you want to. And you want it pretty pigmented, but less than these trees in the front. You just want a lighter version of that. And we're going to give these hills back here some trees. So these are just like little tiny points in the background. And we'll go ahead and do a couple of them. You can kind of put some across here as well. Might even do some back here. And this is mostly just a straight up and down line with a little bit of wiggling. It doesn't have to be really complicated. It's like little triangles in the distance. You can kind of just add them in wherever it looks like there needs to be some more interesting things happening. Like that. I think I'm going to do a few more here. Maybe a couple out here. And I'm going to add a little bit darker black to some of these to show that some of them are further back, some of them are further forward. And I think that looks pretty good. So, one thing I want to try before we totally sign off is I want to try a couple of interesting supplies. He says, I like it. Yay, I'm so glad. Isn't it interesting how you do this lights in the sky and you're just like, oh, it all looks weird. I don't know if I like this. My lights down here in the water actually showed up brighter. But yeah, and then you add all the stuff around it, and then you tend to like it better. So what I want to do is add a few interesting supplies. One of them is the dimensional magic that we used last week. I'm going to go ahead and give this another shot. But I'm going to use it with a paintbrush today instead of just by itself. So I'm going to grab a paintbrush real quick. And I'm going to try painting it onto the water. My water is already totally dry. And I'm not going to add as much as I did last week. Because last week, if you didn't hear the live that's inside the art journaling DIY group, go ahead and check that group out, because I did a whole review on this supply. And I talked about what we did last week and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and what I would suggest for future projects. So it's a really good resource if you want to find out about what I think about this one. Now, the reason I'm painting this on is because when I used it last week, and you'll find out more about that if you go and watch that video. But the reason I am painting it on is because it flowed so much last week that I had to like babysit it for a half an hour. It was really crazy all over the place. And I didn't want it to do that again. So I'm painting it on very strategically today. And I think that's going to be a lot more forgiving. And then the other thing to think about is, like I said on that video, this is a liquid and watercolors are activated by water. So therefore, if you are not careful, this kind of liquid, even the dimensional magic, can actually reactivate your watercolors. So be real careful not to paint with them too much. Whoops, I shouldn't say paint with them. Not to paint on them too much while you are spreading your dimensional magic around. Sorry, I have a drip over here on my cloth. Jackie said, where did I buy it? This one I didn't buy. Mom actually had it, but I saw it at Hobby Lobby. So I assume it would also be there. I would also check Joann's. I'm guessing they have some, and Michael's. And then you can definitely get it online. I found it online as well. So check that out. Okay, so now what I want to do is just add a little bit of glossy color to, I shouldn't say color, texture to my trees, because I thought it was weird to have some texture on the water and nowhere else. So I'm just going to add some of this to the trees as well to make them shiny. It's more like something you can see in person. I'm sure the screen doesn't show as much, but I'm basically just adding shine with my paintbrush. And I'm thinking, you know, a semi-gloss or glossy paint, or even like a Mod Podge, regular Mod Podge would work well for that too. But I just wanted to try it today just to see. Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to use my Pen Touch 1 millimeter. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. Here we go. 1 millimeter paint pen, and this you shake up before you use it. You get to try out all kinds of supplies today. Jackie looked yesterday and couldn't find it. Okay, and you were at Hobby Lobby, I'm assuming. Yeah, so it was around the holidays. It was in its own little section, like with all these really cool Mod Podges, like lots of different kinds of Mod Podges. And I didn't see it after that, so I'm guessing that was either like a special they were doing because it's, you know, the crafty season, or they just decided to stop carrying it or something. So maybe try looking online because I'm thinking that would be the easier way to get it. So right now I'm adding in some stars, and I'm doing it all different sizes because they could be different distances away, but I'm only putting it on the blue and the black areas because you wouldn't be able to see the stars right up next to the northern lights. Now this blob looks way big, so I'm going to turn this into a moon. I'm just going to draw that into a circle because that bit of paint really came out fast. I'm just going to turn this into my moon. Not sure if the moon would even be that big with the northern lights like that, but we'll leave it. And then you can put some stars even down further into the blue as well, because this northern lights would just kind of break into the middle of the sky, but you would still have stars off here in the distance as well. And then I didn't do it. I'm not even, oh, yep, I can. So I wasn't sure if I'd be able to paint on top of this. I should have done it before I did the dimensional magic, but because this is like an acrylic paint, I'm able to do it. I'm going to go ahead and put stars down in the water as well to show that that water is reflecting all of that. And you don't have to do very many. You can just do a little bit like that. Terry says that's been out of stock everywhere. Ah, okay. So maybe it's just needs to be restocked. So maybe if you wait till like the end of the month or something, or whenever they redo their craft supplies, you might be able to find it then. I'm going to use this white pen to add some snow to my trees. And I'm just going to kind of pile them up on some of the branches, pile it up on some of the branches and at the top. I think that'll look pretty. Just give it some lumps of snow. It's nice when you do the snow in kind of a triangle shape, like a lumpy triangle, because that's kind of the direction it piles up onto this shape of tree. So that's how I'm doing those. And then of course you'll end up with more snow toward the top, less toward the bottom, because the top of the tree is going to catch more snow. Makes sense. There we go. All right, last but not least, I want to use a little bit of our scripture and put that in the sky. So our scripture was John 8:12, and one of the phrases from that scripture is light of life. So I think that would be a really pretty phrase to actually paint on. I'm going to use a white pen that I just got recently. Let me see if this is the right one. Yeah, so this is a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen brush. It has a brush tip on it, and just need to make sure you guys can see. So when you paint with it, you can actually do thin and thick strokes, just like you would if you were working with a regular pen, but it paints in white. So I'm going to do the word life, or maybe I'll do light. Yeah, I'll do light. Obviously, that would be better. Let me clean off this pen. I want to make sure there's no color on it. It just picked up some of that black from my scrap paper. Okay, and I'm just going to do the word light across the sky in like a calligraphy. And if it doesn't show up very much, I may end up using my paint pen. Oh, it's barely showing up. I don't even think you guys can see that. Okay, so that gave me a guide at least, but I'm definitely going to come up with my paint pen and finish that. So here's my paint pen. And with the paint pen, it's not as fun because you can't use your thick and thin brush strokes with pressure. You have to kind of fake your calligraphy by coming back in and thickening the downstrokes, but it still works. So we'll just go with that. So I'm going to thicken these downstrokes. All the downstrokes, you just want them a little thicker. That's how you get that calligraphy look. Make them a little wider. Now this paint pen is actually liquidy enough that it is reactivating the watercolors as well. So this white has a slight pink tint to it, or maybe it's just because it's a little bit opaque on the first go around. Look how pretty that is. So I have found that there are very few white writing utensils or paint pens or anything like that that really give a good opaque line. I just feel like the only way to really get a super opaque line is to use white acrylic paint, or I would love to try white calligraphy ink sometime on top of watercolors, because I think you could actually get a pretty opaque color with that. So there's light. And then I'm just going to do some dark shadows next to that so that that word shows up better. And I may have to come in a little bit more with the white once this first layer dries. But I'm just going to go, I have a Fudenosuke Tombow pen, and I'm using this because I want to use the same color in a minute. But it actually has a brush tip, but I'm just going to use it to border the left side of these letters. So L-I, and you want to make sure you do the dot anytime you're bordering your lettering. I'm going to dot your I. Light. Like that. And you want to go on the left side of everything. There we go, light, and I'm going to do in just a bold font of life. And I'm keeping my font really flowy because I want it to just kind of look like it's running across the sky, just like the northern lights are. And I'm going to come over and do just one. Oh, this looks like it needs more snow down here. Those areas at the bottom look a little bare. Maybe I'll just add some more. Okay. And then I'm going to give this one more layer of white. Sometimes it's a little hard to get the paint to flow without dripping it. So I'm always real careful when I'm pressing to get more paint that it's not just going to pour out of the pen, which sometimes it will if you're not careful. There we go. That looked like it gave it a brighter white. Nice. So light of life. And that's all we're going to do today. So there is today's art journal page. Let me see if you guys can see that on here. All right. What do you guys think of that page? Let me know if you guys like the phrase light of life, or if you're going to try a different phrase on yours. I'd like to see what you guys do. And that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you all so much for joining me. If you really liked this page, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to do me a favor and share it with anyone else that you think would enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it. You can also tag them, do the @ and put their name in the comments, and they will get to see it. And that will share it with other people who can come and art journal with us. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoyed today's. This is probably one of my favorite pages from this month. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care, everybody. Have a happy, happy Friday, and I will see you next week. Bye.